Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today got another leveling guide for you. This one will be based with no uniques being used on it. It's going to be the Sentinel class with the Void Knight Mastery using Warpath. And we'll be having Warpath Echo once we build into the Mastery a bit, so you can have multiple Warpaths active at the same time. You can channel it infinitely, and ultimately what's going to happen is you're always going to be on the move, have good AoE and good survivability with your health and leech back on hit, which is really nice. Again, like all my leveling guides, in the description below you'll find timestamps when we put points into the skills, unlock specializations, and put our passive points in. At that time I'll also go over what you should be looking for, what kind of weapon we have, and of course you'll find all that in the timestamps in the description below. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Alright travelers, we are now level 4, which means we get to spec into our first skill, but first the character sheet. For the resistances, you really want to get as much physical, some fire in the first chapter helps, and then some void resist. And some void we'll be able to get as well as fire in the passives, so we'll go over that here in a second, but work on your resistances first. They're the most important for defense. For skills, we're going to go ahead and specialize into our first skill, which we're going to do Warpath. This is a Warpath leveling guide. We'll be using Warpath all the way from the start to the finish. Now Warpath does cost 10 mana per second. You do not regen mana while channeling it, so if you've been using it since we unlocked it at level 2, you've noticed you run out of mana pretty quick. So the first thing we're going to want to do is get that mana cost completely gone. So we're going to go ahead and put a point into Unchained. We're going to end up putting 2 points here and 1 into Reckless Spin. This does reduce your elemental resistance, so you want to make sure that you're getting as much elemental resistance as you can in the beginning. And once we have other ways to get mana back and we have more points to play around with, we'll end up taking this out later. You don't really want to keep it for the entire progression, but early on it really helps being able to infinitely channel it, and you're not too worried about that damage early on. After that, we're going to be going for as much damage and then into the Echo and turning it into Void. That'll be the purpose of it. For passives, we got 2 more points. We're going to go ahead and throw both of them into Juggernaut for that fire resist, void resist, and strength. Warpath does scale with strength, so it will get increased damage based on how much strength you have, so we're going to be putting the first 5 points we get into there. For the inventory, just go with a two-handed weapon. You want as much added damage as you can get. Added melee physical for now. It'll be added melee void damage later. Increased attack speed is really good. And then for your survivability, if you get a weapon with health on melee hit, that's really going to help you. Warpath hits twice as fast as most normal skills, so you're doing lots of hits, and that health back on hit's really going to keep you alive in the game. With just health on hit, you can make it all the way through the entire campaign. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 8 when we spec into our second skill. Alright travelers, we are now level 8, which means we get to spec into our second skill. But first, the character sheet. As you can see, we're working on those elemental resists. Still need to get the physical up. And again, Warpath is going to end up reducing our elemental resist, so you really want to get as much of this as possible, especially 30% plus after we spec in Warpath, just so that you don't have to worry about taking too much more damage. But for the skills, we got 3 more points for Warpath. We're going to go ahead and throw 1 more point in Unchained, 1 point in Reckless Spin to reduce that cost down to 0, so you can infinitely channel Warpath now. Again, your resistances go down by 30%, which is going to make you take a lot more damage from the elemental resistances. If you don't want to do that and you're worried about dying, if you're playing hardcore, definitely just keep putting points into Unchained. 5 points here can do the same thing of reducing the cost to nothing. But with our last points, we're going to go ahead and start building into the Void Spiral. This gives us melee Void damage. It's doubled. We are using a two-handed weapon, so we're getting 10 from it. But we're going to start working towards the Warpath Echoes and then into the hit damage per time rod. After all those points are in, you can definitely come back, trade this out, and fill this up. And then respec with the Unchained, especially as you get towards endgame. And then after that, we're going to work towards getting that mana back so we can have procs like Anomaly and Sigils of Hope later that are going to cost mana while we channel. The nice thing about being able to channel infinitely is you can't be stunned while channeling. So this allows us to never be stunned, which is just going to make you feel much, much better early on. For our second skill, we're going to go ahead and spec into Lunge. It really doesn't matter what you spec into at this point, but Lunge is a nice movement skill if you're not channeling. And with it, we're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Dawn Charge just to work towards being invulnerable while we are lunging. For passives, we got 7 more points. We're going to go ahead and throw 3 more into Juggernaut for that fire and void resist as well as increased strength, and then 4 points into Armor Clad for that increased, or for the flat armor, and then reduced damage taken from nearby enemies, which will make you feel a little bit tankier to offset that negative elemental resist that we have. And then for the inventory, again, just the same stats on the weapon. As long as you have health on melee hit, keep looking for that. That's going to make you feel much tankier. And then we went with elemental resist on the chest. But elemental resist, if you find any of those affixes, put them on anything that you're finding just to feel a lot more tanky. And that'll be it for this update. I will see you guys at level 15 when we spec in some more points. Alright, Travelers, we are now level 14. Time to put in some more passives, some more points. For the character sheet, again, continue to work on getting your elemental resist, your physical resist, your void resist up. You basically want to make sure you get all of these to 75% as quick as possible, but it doesn't really need to be done until the end of the campaign. And again, since we're channeling Warpath and have health on hit, you're going to feel really tanky the whole campaign anyways. For skills, we got 2 more points for Warpath. You have some choices here. Again, if you didn't take the Reckless Spin, you're probably going to put these into the Unchained to reduce that cost. If you feel like you're moving really slow, you can put a point into Quicksilver Wind to give yourself 10% more move speed, so you can just go through the maps real quicker. Of course, either of those 2 options, you're going to feel more ZTPS because you're not really getting into too much damage, and Warpath doesn't hit the hardest. It's just kind of going to hit quick. That's why we're building into a lot of attack speed with it. But for us, for this, we're perfectly fine going with this. You're still going to feel tanky. The move speed's alright. We have some silver rings on, so we have a little extra move speed. We're going to go ahead and throw 1 more point into Void Spiral so that we have another 10 melee void damage, and then 1 point into Echo Knight. So this way, while we are spinning, there's going to be a chance, as long as we've been channeling for at least 2 seconds and moved 4 meters, which is about 1/4 of your screen, it's not too far, you're going to have a % chance for Warpath to Echo, which will create a stationary Warpath for 2 seconds on the spot, and you're going to have 50% more void damage. Now, in order for that echo to work, you must be a Void Knight, because we have 0% echo chance right now, and this is based off your echo chance. It's double your echo chance. But once we're a Void Knight, we'll have a 10% chance. We're going to choose our mastery here soon, so this node will give us a 20% chance every second to be echoing that Warpath, and that's really going to help out your damage and kill things that are chasing behind you. For Warpath, or for Lunge, we have 4 more points. We're going to throw all 4 of them into Juggernaut to dash, so we have 100% block while lunging. Of course, we're going for that invulnerable on the next point. For passives, we got 9 more points. We're going to cap out the Juggernaut. We're going to cap out the Armor Clad for that extra armor and reduce damage taken from nearby enemies. Then we're going to throw 4 points into Fearless for that Vitality and increased health regen. The Vitality also gives us Poison and Necrotic Resist, which is nice. And then 1 point into Stalwart Defense just for that block chance. Never hurts to have a little extra block. And then for the inventory, again, just go for a 2-handed weapon with health on melee hit. Added void damage at this point is what you're going to start wanting to look for, and then as much melee attack speed as possible. For me, I've got melee damage and leech, not really what I wanted, but it's what I found so far. Another thing, I had this drop. I'm not going to wear it. However, if you have one of these drop, which it did for me, it's the Vortex Pennant, this gives you +1 to Warpath, so you'll have an extra skill point for it, which is really nice. Also, if you're choosing to dual wield, which will give you more attack speed, and you'll do more damage, but you'll take more damage. But if you're feeling like you're tanky enough and you really want to try it, you can dual wield, and this will give you 120% increased physical damage while dual wielding. It doesn't do us much good right now, or it would do us much good right now, except we're going to be going completely void. But for that +1 Warpath early on, the extra point is nice. So this also gives you health gained on melee hit, so that can be really helpful if you hadn't found it on a weapon yet. So if you find it, go ahead and throw it on. It'll do you good in the early game. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 20 when we spec into our 3rd skill. Alright, travelers, we are now at level 20, which means it's time to spec into our third skill. First, the character sheet. We're still working on getting our elemental resist up. We do have quite a bit of void at this point, which is really good for chapter 2 and 3, and some physical resist would be nice as well. But again, you're working towards getting all these to 75% first before you really worry about your other defenses. For skills, we got 2 more points for Warpath. We're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Apocalypse Whirl so that we change the base damage from physical to void. This also gives us time rot chance on hit, and then of course any bleed and ignite chance that you have anywhere is going to turn to time rot as well. And then we're going to put points in Maul of the Depth, because with that time rot chance you can have up to 12 stacks of that on the enemy. And as you put more stacks of that on the enemy, you get 5% more hit damage. So at 12 stacks, which is 1 point here, that's 60% more damage. Once we have 3 points in there, that's up to 180% more damage, which means you're almost tripling the damage of Warpath with just 3 points in here, as you get those stacks of time rot on the enemy. And as we build up how much time rot chance we have, you have some bleed chance, some ignite, some time rot chance on melee hits in the passive tree, you'll be able to put 12 stacks on single targets really easy. Everything else will die before you get to 12 stacks. For lunge, we got 2 more points. We're going to take that 1 point unstoppable to be invulnerable while lunging, and then we're going to go ahead and put 1 point in Whirl's renewal so that we can reduce that cooldown. But again, we're not really using it too much. Eventually we'll get rid of lunge and move into another skill, but for now we're going to have it. And then for our third skill, it's going to be volatile reversal, but we have to put some passive points in first. We need to put 2 points into Sentinel class, so you have to have 20 points in the base class before you can move on to the other classes. So we're going to go ahead and put both points into Fearless for that vitality. And then we have 7 points left. We're going to put 5 into the Void Knight so that we can unlock Volatile Reversal. So all 5 of those are going to go into Temporal Corruption. This gives us 10 more flat void damage with all of our skills. And then we have 2 points left. We're going to put them both in the Paladin, both of them going into Defiance for that elemental resist. We're going to cap that out. We need to get 15 points in here by level 35 so that the next skill we spec into will be Sigils of Hope. And then all of our points after that will go into the Void Knight, our mastered tree. And then now that we have that skill unlocked, we have Volatile Reversal here. We're going to go ahead and specialize it. We have 4 points. We're going to go ahead and throw 2 of them into Time Sap, and then 2 of them into Warped Time. And every time that we use it, we'll have more melee attack speed. You keep it for the duration equal to how much time you go back. Volatile Reversal is a skill. When you use it, you go back in time, which means that you'll go back to your position 2 seconds ago. Your mana and health will also return to that point. We'll spec out of that later. And essentially it will cancel your channeling. So if you're doing Warpath and you use it, you will stop channeling Warpath for a second, which means that you'll have to be channeling 2 seconds again before the echoes have a chance to start proccing. But you will have more melee attack speed. It's really useful against bosses to really stack up a bunch of melee attack speed to do more damage quicker. But that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 27, 28 when we spec in some more points. Alright, travelers, we are now level 28, and it's time to put in some more points into our passives and skills. But first, the character sheet. Again, still working on getting all of those resistances up to 75%, and of course, additional health never hurts. For skills, we got 2 more points for Warpath. I already threw 1 in, but I'm going to throw the second one in. That's into Maul of the Deep, so that we can have up to 180% more hit damage against enemies. You'll notice that when your skill does Echo and you guys are on single targets, you get those 12 stacks pretty quick, and then you just take the boss's life down really quick. We got 3 more points for lunge. We're going to go ahead and throw 2 more of them into Warrior's Renewal, as well as 1 point into Initiate's Onslaught. And then for Volatile Reversal, we got 5 more points. We're going to throw 1 more in Warped Time, 1 point into Time Sap, 1 point into Time Lost Vitality to get that cooldown reduction really going, and then 2 points into Traveler's Fatigue. For passives, we got 9 more points. We're going to throw 6 of them into the Paladin. They're all going to go into Defiance for the Elemental Resist. On the next update, we'll be level 35, and to spec into our 4th skill, we're going to have Sigils of Hope, so we'll end up spending 7 more points in here. A lot of those going into that melee Ignite chance, which gets converted to Time Rot chance for us, which is really nice. But the last 3 points we have, we're going to put them in the Void Knight, cap out the Temporal Corruption for that extra Void damage, and then 2 points in World Eater so that we get that Void damage leached as health, so that if you don't have health on melee hit, especially as we start to stack more and more damage, the Void damage leech is going to become more powerful than the health on hit, which will be really, really nice. And then for the inventory, again, nothing new here. Go for the health on melee hit, melee attack speed, added Void damage, increased Void damage. That's basically the stats that you're going to want. And then on gear, get those resistances. Get your Void, your physical, and your elemental resist. Those are going to be the main things that you want. And that'll be it for this update. We'll see you guys at level 35 when we spec into our 4th skill. Alright, Travelers, we are now level 35, which means it's time to spec into our 4th skill, but first the character sheet. You can see we have about 500 health on this character. Still working at getting all of those resist up to 75%. We're about halfway there. For skills, we got 2 points for Warpath. Gonna go ahead and throw 1 in Iron Reach for increased area, and then 1 point in Roaring Steel. And since we are wearing a 2-handed weapon, this is a 16% more damage multiplier for us, which is really nice. For lunge, we got 2 more points. Gonna throw them both into Initiate's Onslaught. And then for Volatile Reversal, we have 2 more points. We're gonna go ahead and throw 1 in Time Lost Wisdom for that 300% cooldown recovery, and then 1 point in Ancient Reversal. So we go back in time for 3 seconds, but we also get our buffs for 3 seconds at that point. Our 4th skill is going to be Sigils of Hope, but first we have to do the passives. We have 9 points. We're going to throw 2 of them into Phoenix Straight for that melee Ignite chance. The reason you want that melee Ignite chance is because in Warpath, that Ignite chance is converted to Time Rot chance, so you can get to your 12 stacks faster. We got 7 more points, 5 of them going into Blinding Light for that Endurance. That unlocks the Sigils of Hope for us, which we'll spec into in a second. The last 2 points both going into the Void Knight, and we're going to throw both of them into World Eater for more of that melee damage and Void damage leached as health. Then back to the skills. For Sigils of Hope, we have 5 points. We're going to throw 4 of them into Empowering Sigils, and 1 into the Last Wish so that we have a chance to summon it on kill. That's how we're going to be proccing it for now. We're not going to manually cast it. It's very mana expensive, and it's not an insta-cast, which means that you would have to stop channeling Warpath to cast it and spend a ton of mana, which you're not going to regen while Warpathing. Eventually, we'll turn it into an insta-cast. You'll be able to use it occasionally in Warpath once we have Warpath giving us mana back every 3 seconds. But for now, it's just going to be procced on kill, and we're going to be converting it to Void to give us a bunch of flat increased damage as well as increased melee damage when one is procced, which will be nice. And then for the inventory, again, whatever two-handed weapon you have, just get as much added melee damage as you can. Here we're going for a lot more crit chance, and we have some health on melee hit for our survivability. And then on the gear, just get as much resistances as you can everywhere to cap those out first. It'll become much easier in the end game when you have gear with higher tiers that make it much easier, but for now, get it anywhere that you can. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 42 when we spec in some more passives into our skills, or more points into our passives and skills. Alright, travelers, we are now level 42. We're still working on getting all of our resistances up to 75%, but we have capped out cold. But remember, when we're warpathing right now, we do have all three of these reduced by 30%. So overcap is pretty nice. You want to get to about 90-95% right now until we switch those points around in warpath so we don't have that minus 30%. Skills, we got 2 more points for Warpath. We're going to throw 1 more into Void Spiral for another 10 melee void damage because we have a 2-hander, so this is doubled. And then 1 point in Whirling Steel for another 16% more damage because we have a 2-hander here. And that'll open up our ability to move into a larger area as well as start getting mana back. Once we get mana back, we can start casting Sigils of Hope while we're going through Warpath, and that way we can get our mana back and still sustain 100% uptime. For Lunge, we got 2 more points. We're going to put them both into the Onslaught. For Volatile Reversal, 3 more points. We're going to cap out the Ancient Reversal so that we go back in time for 4 seconds, giving us the buffs for 4 seconds. Then 1 point in Terminal Void Rift, as well as 1 point in Dark Expanse. We're going to work towards the Harbinger of Dust, so that when we hit enemies with a Void Rift with VR, they'll end up taking 30% increased damage, which will be really nice. And then for Sigils, we got 7 more points. We're going to convert it to Void, so 3 points into Decree of Flame, so that we're now getting a total of 6 fire damage, and then 1 point in Sigils of Despair, so that for every sigil that's active, you get a flat 6 void damage, and then you also get 15% increased void. So this is a huge damage boost when you have them active. Then we're going to go with 2 points in World of Alacrity and 1 point in Invigorate. We're going to work towards the mana efficiency so that we can reduce that cost, so we can cast it more often. 1 point in Exigency will allow us to actually insta-cast it while we're using Warpath. This will give it a cooldown, and then our final points will go into that global melee damage. We can get up to 150% increased damage for our build with this every time we cast it for 3 seconds. And then for passives, we got 9 more points. They're all going to go into the Void Knight Mastery, with 1 point into Void Corruption, so our critical strike multiplier will be 1% higher for every point inside of the Void Knight tree, which will end up being about 70 points. And the last 8 points all into Void Blades to give us 24 flat melee void damage added to Warpath, which is going to be really nice for damage. And for the inventory, again, just get all the resistances that you need on gear, and then at the same time for a weapon, melee attack speed, increased void, added flat void, health on hit, and then if you have ignite or chill chance or ignite or bleed chance on hit, all that gets converted to time rot, but basically just get as much added damage and as much attack speed as possible. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 50 when we spec into our 5th skill. Alright, travelers, we are now level 52, so it is time to spec into our 5th skill, which you can do at level 50, but we were having so much fun leveling up we skipped a couple more levels. In reality, we just needed a couple more passive points to be able to unlock Anomaly, so I could show you where to put the points, so that's why we're level 52 and not 50. The character sheet, you can see that we have our elementals finally capped out. We're going to be switching some points in Warpath so we don't have to worry about that negative 30% elemental cost. But again, you still want to get all your resistances to 75%, which we're still working towards. For skills, we got one more point for Warpath. I'm going to go ahead and put this 1 point in Battle. I'm going to go ahead and throw this point into Unchained, and then I'm going to remove the point that we have here with Reckless Spin. So you'll see that our channel cost is 1, even though it's 10 minus 6, which is 4. There's a relic you can start wearing at level 50 that gives you negative 3. So our cost right now is going to be 1 mana. But with this setup, the next 2 points, we're going to put 1 into Battle Masters and then 1 into Dark Nexus. And with this, you'll actually gain 4 mana over the time period of 3 seconds, which means you can infinitely channel and actually be getting mana back. At that point, we can start using things like Anomaly and Sigils of Hope while we're channeling it to start boosting our damage, getting leech, crit chance, all of that good stuff. For Lunge, we got 1 more point. We're going to go ahead and throw it into Cool of the Week. For Volatile Reversal, we're going to continue to go into Dark Expanse until we unlock that Harbinger of Dust. For Sigils of Hope, we have 3 points. We're going to go ahead and turn 𝐁𝐮𝐲 for the instacast. This gives it a mana cost of 45, but with 1 point in Invigorate and 1 point into Quiet Mind, we can start reducing that. It's already back down to 41. We can actually get it down to about 25 if we put all the points here. So between putting points here and into the World of Power, we'll kind of go back and forth between how much offense we want and then how much mana we're actually sustaining. And then for the last skill, it's going to be Anomaly, but first, the passives. We've got 11 more points to put into the Void Knight. We're putting 2 of them into World Eater. Then we're going to throw 4 of them into Rot Ripples for that time rot duration increase. And then we're going to throw 5 points into Rot Grip for that melee chance to apply time rot on enemies. So you're going to have over 100% time rot at this point between all the things that we have on this build, which allows us to really stack up those time rots much quicker to get to those 12 stacks to get that 180% more damage. And then all those points did unlock Anomaly. Next, we're going to be able to start increasing our echo chance, which will start proccing those Void Warpath echoes a lot more. So back to skills, we're going to go ahead and put 7 points into Anomaly. First, we're going to start with 4 points in Emission, and then 1 point into Borrowed Time, so that it's now an instacast. So while we're warpathing, we can actually cast it. It has a 0 mana cost until we take Time Bubble, so right now, we'll actually be able to use it right off the bat. Once you make it cost mana, you got to make sure that you're getting mana back in Warpath. So at the next update, we'll kind of cover all of that. But the next 2 points, we're going to go ahead and go with Void Touch, so that we do Time Rot on return, and 1 point in Immediacy, so that the Anomaly effects are triggered instantly, and next we'll build into that Time Bubble. And then for the inventory, the relic is the Inscribed Tablet, so at level 50, make sure that you're really looking for one of these, check the shops, make sure you're checking your items. You really want that negative 3 melee attack mana cost. It's really going to help you out with speccing our Warpath tree. And then after that, again with the weapon, just get as much added melee damage as you can, melee attack speed, void damage. At level 56, you can wear the Odachi, which gives you a huge melee critical strike multiplier for crit hits. So if you build into crit chance a lot or get close to 100% crit, which we can get 150% increased crit chance off our base through Time Bubble and Anomaly. So once we really build into that, that melee critical strike multiplier is going to be huge for the build. And then for some idols, Echo damage, when a skill echoes, it's going to really increase the Echo Warpath damage, and then just getting elemental resist, health, vitality, anything else that you want with idols, you can look for. But that's going to be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 60 when we spec into some more points. Alright, Travelers, we are now level 63. We went all the way up to 63 to have enough passives to get some more Echo Chants. So, for the character sheet, you can see we're still working on our defenses. Basically, Poison's the last one I really need to get up there. It's lacking the most. And we have about 1,000 health. For skills, I got 2 more points for Warpath. I'm going to go ahead and put them both in Dark Nexus. That's just so that while I'm doing this, I'll be able to do Time Bubble, which will start costing us 20 mana about every 18 seconds, and then we'll also be able to do sigils more often and get a real big damage boost. So that'll be a lot of damage for us. It's going to do way more getting that mana back and not having to stop channeling Warpath than putting them into Void Spiral for now, but we can put points in here later. For Lunge, I'm going to go ahead and respec this. We just never use it on this build. I'd rather spec into Rebuke as a defensive skill. You take 80% less damage while you're channeling Rebuke. So if you're warpathing and you see a boss mechanic and there's no way you're going to get out of it, you can simply just switch over to Rebuke and take the hit. You're more than likely going to survive because of how much DR you get in Rebuke. On top of it giving you 80% DR, we're going to build into it giving us some health regen with 2 points in Regenerative Shell, then 5 points in Augmented Plating, so we have 125% increased armor, and then we're also going to Brave the Elements with a point there to take reduced elemental damage while we're channeling it, so you're going to be really, really tanky with it. For Volatile Reversal, we're going to put 1 more point in Dark Expanse, and then 2 points in Harbinger of Dust, so that enemies hit by the Void Rift that we create with this will take 20% more damage. For Sigils of Hope, 3 more points, all 3 going into Word of Power, so that for 3 seconds after casting Sigils of Hope, we'll have 90% increased melee damage. Remember, each sigil also gives us 15% increased void damage, as well as 7 flat void damage, and then here we also get 20% damage granted per active sigil. So 20 plus 90 is 110. Plus the 15, you're getting 135% for 3 seconds on that first sigil, which is really nice with 7 flat. That's a lot of damage with it, and now that we're getting mana back with Warpath, we should be able to spam it more often, especially on single targets. And then for Anomaly, right now it has a 0 mana cost, but with Time Bubble, that's going to give it a 20, so this is why we really needed that mana regen. So we're going to put 1 point in Time Bubble so that it will create this big purple bubble that will do Void Res shred stacks on enemies as well as slow enemies that are inside the bubble. And then we're going to go ahead and put 4 points in Temporal Mastery so that the Time Bubble lasts longer. By default, it lasts 5 seconds. With this, it lasts about 9 seconds now. With 1 point in Lingering Memory, you get the buff for 2 seconds afterwards. It has an 18-second cooldown, but you basically get the buff for 11 seconds at the moment. With some CDR, we'll eventually get this to 100% uptime. 1 point in Time Bubble so that it's now cast on us, which means it'll follow us everywhere we go, which will mean we get all of its benefits the entire time that it's up. And the last 4 points, we're going to go into Decimation so that we have 120% increased critical strike chance while it's active. So that's going to be a big damage boost for us. And for passives, we got 6 more points. I already put 5 into the Echoing Strikes. That Echo Chance makes the build feel so much faster. With the next 5 points, we're going to go ahead and put them all into Eternal Form for that 5 Vitality plus 10% increased health. This is a big boost to our defense. And then the last point into Time Legion. This is where the next 9 points will go for that extra Echo Chance, Time Rot Chance, and increased melee attack speed. That's a huge defensive boost for us. And then we'll put a point in Avatar of Regret so we have that maximum Echo Chance, which will be 40% for most skills. Warpath is doubled, so there'll be an 80% chance every second for it to echo. So you'll start seeing them all the time. And then for the inventory, we did find an Odachi, a 2-handed sword. It's got that melee critical strike multiplier, and this one had tier 6 melee attack speed on it, which was huge. But again, health on hit, increased void damage, flat void damage, and then if you do bleed or ignite chance on hit, those will be converted to time rot chance, so all of those are really helpful. For everything else, just get your defenses in order. You can also get increased echo damage when a skill echoes on the chest. So we had this fall in the echo earlier, which was really cool. And that'll be it for this update. I'll see you guys at level 76 when we put in the final points to our skills. Alright, travelers, we are now level 76, and with that we're going to put the final points into our skills, put in some more passive points, and then go over some uniques that you can put on and turn this into an end game build. So for the character sheet, you can see I'm still working on getting all of my resistances capped. Poison is the main one I still need to do. We got about 1300 health. That'll be much higher when you find really good gear and start getting into Exalted, tier 6 and 7s. You should end up with about 2500 when you're really kind of min-maxing at the end. Decent amount of armor. And then for skills, we got 2 more points for Warpath. I did find a chest that had tier 5 Warpath level on it. Not mandatory, so if you don't have the +2 levels, I ended up putting the final point, 1 into Dark Nexus and then 1 into the 𝐓𝐤𝐻𝐻, and then we have 4 out of 5 in the Void Spell. But for now, I'm going to put the last 2 into 𝐓𝐤𝐻𝐻 just so we can move a lot faster. It feels a lot better when you go through the echoes much quicker. If you don't care about your speed so much, go ahead and keep capping out that flat damage as well as the Rolling Steel for that more damage multiplier. For Rebuke, we got 12 more points. We're going to cap out the Brave the Elements. We're going to put a point into Protective Legacy, 1 point into Burst of Speed, and then the rest of them into Solemn Vow. So when you're done with your channeling, you keep all these buffs for an extended amount of time, which is equal to the amount that you channeled the Rebuke for, plus 100%. So if you channel it for 2 seconds, you'll get 4 seconds of all these buffs. And then the last 2 points into Regenerative Shell for that health regen while you're doing it. So if you do take some hits, you'll regen the health really quick. And then for Volatile Reversal, we got 2 more points. Going to go ahead and cap out the Harbinger of Dust so the enemy takes more damage when you hit them with the Time Rift. And then 1 point in Food to give you global void damage per time rot on the enemy, and this will work for any skill, not just this. So when you hit an enemy with time rot, this will give us 1% more damage against that target with our void damage, and we can have up to 12 stacks of time rot on that enemy. So this is a 12% more modifier for 4 seconds because it lasts as long as you go back in time for 2 seconds by default and 4 seconds since we did the Ancient Reversal. So it's a bit more damage for us, which is nice. We'll probably unspec some points from somewhere else to fill and cap that out. For Sigils of Hope, we got 2 more points. Going to throw them both into Word of Power so that when we cast Sigils of Hope, we get that 150% increased melee damage for 3 seconds, which is really, really nice. And then for Anomaly, the last 2 points, we're going to cap out the Temporal Mastery to make it last as long as possible. And for now, we're going to go with Decimation for that crit chance, although later we may take all these points out and build into having the enemy take 100% more damage for 5 seconds, which is really, really nice. For passives, we've thrown more points until we capped out Time Legion, and then we put a point in Avatar Regret. The last 3 points are going to go into Dread for that increased void damage and move speed. And then for the inventory, again, you just want a 2-handed weapon that's got melee attack speed, melee critical strike chance, added void damage, increased void damage. Those are all some real good ones. And then starting at level 65, you can wear Apothi's Maul, which is pretty much going to be the best in slot weapon, even without LP. It's going to give you a ton of melee void damage. Match that up with Dark Stride, even without LP, and it's going to give you more move speed than you would have even if you were wearing, say, a tier 6 or tier 7 set of boots with move speed, because you get a bunch of melee or a bunch of move speed based on that added void damage that you have, and the axe comes with a ton of it. You have 130 maximum between the two, which comes out to about 27-28% move speed. Getting LP on these items will just drastically improve that and make them best in slot even more. For everything else, just go with your resistance, your health. You can get some critical strike chance if you want. You can get increased void damage. On the chest, we have increased echo damage when a skill echoes, which is huge. So you can get a ton of damage out of that. And then again for idols, increased echo damage when a skill echoes. And just get vitality, health, anything else in the slots that you are trying to fill up. But that's going to be it for this guide. Let me know in the comments below how you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if your warpath went a different direction than mine. And as always, stay safe and have a good one.